Ladies and gentlemen, welcome into the 143. We're coming at you live with episode 165. Nick, how are we doing today?
We're doing good. Obviously, a lot has happened over the last couple of days, NFL-wise. Seen quite a few signings, and so we're pretty excited to talk about it.
Yeah, tons been going on. Teams have been very active. Some teams have been getting rid of a lot of guys. Other teams have been taking on a lot of contracts, and the Cowboys aren't doing either one. So we can happily say that we are being very selectively aggressive in free agency, like Stephen Jones said. More selective than aggressive, it would seem. But yeah, it's always fun during the offseason when we have the NFL action to talk about because we're already missing football here. And, free agency is always fun. Started officially, I think, Monday at noon Eastern. And as soon as that hit, Twitter was or X was blowing up. Actually, X crashed, Nick, or something. Something happened with X because a lot of the sports journalists trying to get their news out there, like Adam Schefter, Ian Rappaport, those guys. The insiders were not happy because they get paid to tweet this news, and it wasn't working. So Elon Musk really needs to get Twitter.
Step up his game.
X, formerly known as Twitter. He needs to get it back up to where it needs to be because that's what people use for news nowadays.
Yep. I mean, I don't really think people call it X, even though that's what it's called. It's always been Twitter. Even when I refer to it, it's still Twitter. So it is what it is.
Yep. Either way, Elon's in charge of it, so let's get on it. Elon. And day one of free agency, not the best day to have your app go down. So we got to be better. We got to be a lot better. So starting off, stat of the week brought to you by Angels Logistics is actually about the Cowboys. I saw this the other day, and this blew my mind. I'm sure you saw it too. We have not spent over $6 million a year on an outside player in free agency since 2015. It's been a decade since the Cowboys have signed an outside free agent, meaning not re-signing one of our guys, signing somebody from another team in free agency for more than $6 million a year, which means we haven't signed anybody big in a decade.
That's just sad. Because it just goes back to like we've been saying for the last couple of weeks. Every time we rip on the Cowboys is that they try and fix everything with the draft, and that's just not going to work. Every year there's always some big names that I would like to see come to Dallas, but free agency-wise, but that just never seems to happen. Yeah. We like to keep everything within what we've already built. Just re-signing the same guys, just giving them bigger contracts that they're not deserving of. And it's just not fun watching the offseason as a Cowboys fan because it's like, oh, would have been nice to have him, but so-and-so gets signed to another team.
Yeah, we'll just literally touch on the Cowboys really quick before the player of the week. The Cowboys, basically, their biggest free agent signing has been Javonte Williams from the Broncos, coming off of an ACL injury a couple years ago. Just hasn't really been the same since. Signed him for like $3 million for 1 year. So we signed another kind of washed running back. But interesting news is the Cowboys restructured Dak and CeeDee's deals to clear a ton of cap space, making everybody think, they were going to. I mean, if you're going to hit free agency hard, it's got to be when it opens. It's got to be on Monday. And technically, it's got to be a little bit before that to have the deals in place. But they didn't. So Cowboys fans aren't surprised anymore, but just disappointed.
Make sure to jump on free agency early as Cowboys, because make sure to re-sign our punter, Brian Anger. That seemed to be the most important issue that we wanted to address for some reason. That was interesting. That was one of the first things we did. But, I mean, he is important to the team because we sure do love punting. But, anyways, so we can continue on with the NFL. Let's take it back to the NHL with your player of the week. This was probably the biggest deal the last – I don't even know how long. But maybe an hour and a half before the deadline last week, The Dallas Stars made a blockbuster move to trade for Mikko Rantanen from the Carolina Hurricanes, which that has skyrocketed the team's odds to win the Stanley Cup playoffs this year. Huge asset for the Stars. Obviously, he's been one of the best wingers in the sport for a good bit. Back-to-back 100-point seasons. He's got 70 this year already. 2 goals in 2 games for Dallas. Really shores up the power play. And then, once the Stanley Cup playoffs roll around, we'll have Miro Heiskanen healthy, hopefully Tyler Seguin. And so we'll be rocking and rolling with our 20 to go in and win it all. But, that was a huge deal just because we gave up 2 first-round picks, and then another pick as well, and then Logan Stankoven, who is a pretty, highly sought-after prospect. He was kind of expected to stick around, develop with the Stars, and just be a dog, but traded him away and a bit of our future, and we'll have Rantanen for 8 years, which is going to be good because that just opens up the window for this team. Could be looking at maybe the next dynasty, I think. Obviously, that would be kind of sick, but, that's a long ways away.
Stars in win-now mode, always can appreciate that. Out of a Dallas team, we don't always see that, like we were just talking about with the Cowboys, so it's nice to know, some of the Dallas teams are looking to win.
Just goes back to how we rip on the GMs in the Dallas area, where you have just, of the four major sports, you have 2 guys on one side and 2 guys on the other. You've got Jerry and Nico, who everybody hates because Jerry never makes a move, ever. And then Nico, who makes a huge move that everybody hated, right? And
might be the worst trade of NBA history.
And then you got Jim Nill and Chris Young. CY has been putting in the work over the last couple years, building a World Series team, won it in 2023, and we're looking pretty good this year. Jim Nill, back-to-back GM of the year and looking like he could win it again this year. So it's just completely different.
Yep, can always appreciate aggressiveness, not selective aggressiveness, but actual aggressiveness. By the way, the term aggressive should never have like an adjective right before it, describing. Aggressive is the description. And the fact that Steven had to say selectively aggressive means that they're not going to do anything, which they didn't. So we always appreciate them just making us the laughing stock of the NFL as usual. But let's kick it off with kind of the biggest free agency signing, reset the defensive end market. Myles Garrett signed a massive deal with the Browns for about $40 million a year, basically acting like he was going to leave. He wanted to go play somewhere else. The Browns changed his mind, as I'm sure it would work with most. They offered him a record-breaking contract, and now he's going to be in Cleveland, and he gets to lose, 11-plus games a year, but at least he's getting paid a lot of money.
Hey, they got their franchise quarterback in Kenny Pickett, so that's good.
Yeah.
Another big one that I immediately thought of was Washington getting Deebo Samuel. And the reason why that's such a big deal was because Washington gave up almost nothing for him. Mm-hmm. And anytime we as Cowboys fans see a receiver go to a team, we're always thinking about that stupid Jonathan Mingo trade we made in the middle of the season last year for a 4th-round pick. And it's like Deebo went for a 5th. And it's like he is miles above a Jonathan Mingo. Like, it's ridiculous.
Yeah. Eagles and Commanders have been, obviously, in our division, probably the most aggressive so far in free agency, as you would expect. They're the 2 most well-run franchises at the moment. Another Commanders guy, they somehow got Laramie Tunsil out of Houston. A top 5 left tackle right now in the NFL. I don't know why Houston was looking to get rid of him, but Washington picked him up. So, Jaden Daniels going to have a lot more protection to throw to Devo. The Commanders are loading up. They made some other moves. Got to give the Commanders props. Even the Giants are actually doing more stuff than the Cowboys are, but obviously the Giants are going to be bad no matter what. We're not too worried about them. But also, I'm not going to say the guys, but the Bears really shored up their offensive line. Huge props to the new coach over there and Ben Johnson. Just coming over there and taking what he learned from Detroit, shoring up the D line, the O line. That's where it starts, is in the trenches. So, Caleb Williams didn't really. He was the most sacked QB in the league last year. Some of that was his fault. Some of that wasn't. So we'll see how the Bears look now. But, they kind of revamped their O-line. I thought that was big of them. They signed like 2 or 3 guys.
One thing I think a lot of people are going to be looking at this year, I know we'll probably be looking at it as well, is Minnesota with giving Sam Darnold that 3-year contract, because I think a lot of people were saying that, not whatever it was. Seattle. You're right. Seeing if he was actually worth the hype, if he's actually good, or if it was just, a fluke deal where, who knows. But then also with Seattle, no more DK Metcalf, no more Tyler Lockett. Don't really know what the entire plan was there. Kind of interesting.
They look like they're rebuilding or something. They signed Sam, but that's about it. Like they're cleaning house. Aside from that, maybe they're trying to get rid of all these contracts. They're not gonna come close to winning the division. Speaking of that division, it's worth talking about the 49ers basically clearing house, letting all their guys walk. All these defensive studs like Dre Greenlaw, Travarius Ward, Kinslaw, and many others, and obviously Devo as well. 49ers kind of just let a lot of their veteran guys go who had been getting to the Super Bowl. Maybe they're making room for a Brock Purdy contract. I don't know.
Who knows? But, Tampa Bay re-signing Chris Godwin, no surprise there. He's been incredible ever since he got into the league. Been a beast with Tampa Bay. Expecting him to do great things for a while there.
Yeah. Also, speaking of the Seahawks, Geno Smith to the Raiders. So with Pete Carroll and their new OC out of Ohio State. For some reason, I'm forgetting his name. But he's the highest paid OC now. Bringing Geno in is interesting. Obviously, these guys on the Raiders that are getting signed – Chip Kelly, offensive coordinator Chip Kelly. These guys on the Raiders that are getting signed are vetted by Brady, is what we're hearing, especially the quarterback. He's been very involved, Brady has, in their decision-making. So he must have liked something he saw out of Geno. I think Geno has his moments, but honestly, I'd rather draft a QB in that spot. But we'll see how the Raiders do.
They've just been a dumpster fire for pretty much since we've been alive. Never really been relevant. They had that 1 year where Derek Carr was good. And then, I've never really seen the Raiders do anything in my lifetime. Always kind of make some boneheaded, interesting moves in the off season, trying to, I don't even know what they're trying to do, because it doesn't ever look like they're actually trying to rebuild. They just make the most interesting, signings ever. Don't really see the Geno Smith thing working out, but, who knows?
Yep. Rams as well, re-signing Matt Stafford. That was big for them. Matt kind of took a hometown discount. It was reported he was getting offered more by the Raiders and the Giants. But honestly, if I was Matt Stafford and the other two teams were the Raiders and the Giants, you'll take a little bit less money to stay in LA with a Super Bowl contending team as well as a good stadium. He's already living there. He doesn't want to move his family. So I don't know what you thought about that, but also the Rams signing Devontae Adams because they're letting Cooper Kupp go. I thought that was interesting. I don't know why you'd let Cooper Kupp go and then sign Devontae Adams. Kind of seems like a lateral move to me.
I mean, I've always kind of liked Matthew Stafford,
Yeah.
For sticking it out for so long in Detroit, trying to get something there, and then immediately goes to LA, gets himself a Super Bowl ring, and then he's kind of sticking it out, still slinging it with the best of them. I mean, always nice to see a guy like that succeed. The Jets signing Justin Fields was definitely an interesting one. I believe it was made pretty clear at the end of the season that the Jets were moving, or towards the end of the season, that the Jets were going to move on from Aaron Rodgers, and now they're bringing in Justin Fields. Not really. I think we've been pretty transparent here on Under Review when talking about Justin Fields, that we just don't think he's,
crazy how we've been right.
Lived up to the hype, or so to speak. He wasn't really that good in Pittsburgh. Didn't do that great in Chicago before that. And, I mean, I'm kind of expecting the same thing in New York.
At what point do you stop blaming the organization? You start blaming the player. I mean, it's been 2 teams now where it's clearly not worked. And, people are still blaming the organizations he was a part of. They don't understand why they sat Justin Fields when he was, he was playing okay with Pittsburgh. They sat him for Russ. Their offense was awful. We beat them. The Cowboys beat them, and our offense was worse. What was that game? Like 17-16. I mean, it was the Steelers with Justin Fields couldn't move the ball. The Bears with Justin Fields definitely couldn't move the ball. So I don't expect it to be any different in New York. I mean, Garrett Wilson and him played together at Ohio State, but there's just got to be more guys to throw to than just one. So maybe Aaron Glenn and that new coaching staff will have something for Justin Fields. But I just think at what point, this is it for Justin Fields. I think if this doesn't work, he'll be a backup probably for the rest of his career. But also, I think it's worth noting, talking about a team that's actually getting more heat than the Cowboys, believe it or not, in free agency, is the Bengals, because they apparently haven't re-signed any of their guys that they need to re-sign. They franchise tagged T. Higgins for the 2nd year in a row. That's kind of a no-no. It's like an unwritten rule. You don't do that to a player. That basically just means like he has to play for him for another year for the kind of the average of the top 5 wide receiver salaries. So he's getting paid well for a year, but it's in the player's best interest to sign a long-term contract. So you either tag him and sign him, or you don't tag him and just let him play on the tag for a 2nd year. They haven't signed Jamar Chase yet, and they actually are letting Trey Hendrickson, their only bright spot on defense, look at trade options. So I don't know what you think about what's going on over there in Cincinnati, but it doesn't seem to be.
And great. Then Sam Hubbard retiring. Yeah, that right. Was after
29.
9. No, not 9 years. Was it 9 years?
It might have been 9 years.
8 or 9 years, something like that.
He was young.
Retiring.
Or he is young.
He was pretty solid defensively. That is kind of a hit to think about.
That's their 2 edge rushers that you're essentially losing.
Right. And, I did see they brought back Samaje Perine. That's, whatever.
It's a Cowboys-esque type of offseason for them right now. You've got guys that need to be re-signed, and you're out there just signing guys to $3 million deals.
But it is nice to see on Twitter Cincinnati getting, fired upon pretty heavily by everybody out there because, as Cowboys fans, we're used to getting ripped for not signing anybody. Our time is going to come because obviously this isn't going to last too long for Cincinnati. Nope. The fires will die down, and then they'll have nobody to look to, so they'll look to the Cowboys because we're going to do nothing.
Yep.
Or we'll sign somebody useless. But that was pretty refreshing to see the heat getting deflected to somebody else.
Yeah, two more teams we can talk about, and I think we'll have hit on the big ones. Steelers signed DK Metcalf. DK Metcalf and George Pickens will be. Who knows who the wide receiver one is there? I guess DK. Both of them are known for being very fiery and throw fits when they don't get the ball. So they can't both have the ball in the same place. So it's going to be tough for them to figure out. Steelers as well are apparently potentially closing in on a deal. This is Tuesday night. It hasn't happened or anything with Aaron Rodgers. So looks like the Steelers will probably be a solid 9-8, 10-7 again, and their receivers will hate each other, and their defense will be solid as usual. That's what the Steelers are.
Hey, I mean, I think DK Metcalf is going to be pretty ticked from the get-go because he's not going to be able to wear the number 14. But, we'll see what happens there. DeAndre Hopkins getting signed. These last couple years, he's kind of bounced around from team to team. But
he's on the last leg. I think this might be it.
It's just, he was a stud receiver for so long, and then it's just kind of it's just kind of sad. Like I'll say, obviously, we're not Texans fans or whatever, but he was an elite receiver from when we were younger, getting into the game, and now watching him just slowly fade away. It's a little sad to see, but still sticking around in the league, so good for him.
Okay, before we go, we got to just mention the real winners of free agency so far. The definition of all in when it needs to be. Gotta give it up to Mike Vrabel and the New England Patriots for spending just an insane amount of money, basically all on defense in free agency, which is, what you kind of got to start with. And Vrabel's a defensive coach. He's ready to be back home in New England. But, they went out and they signed some ballers, one of whom being from Tennessee, actually, and Landry, used to play for Mike Vrabel. But I think the Patriots, not like they're going to overthrow the Bills or anything this year, but they're in a good spot. They got their quarterback figured out, and they got their defense figured out now. They just get some guys in the draft in terms of receivers. They could be a lot better this year.
And we'll see how the Mike Vrabel thing pans out. But at least right now, it's looking like they're headed in the right direction. I'm sure for New England fans, they're pretty happy that they have a coach who's coming in, pretty much scrapping – not scrapping the whole thing, but
you got to scrap the whole thing, basically, at that point.
Coming in, trying to change the culture a little bit. Keeping –
Vrabel was who I wanted for the Cowboys. So
yeah, he got scooped up pretty quick.
He's a good one.
As he should have been, because I thought he was, good candidate. I feel like we kind of talked about that a long time ago. But, we'll see what happens in New England. They've been suffering down in the depths. But, hey, they got to be at the top for so long. But we'll see what happens with Mike Vrabel.
Yep. Good job, New England.
Well, anyways, here's like to end our shows in under review. Back to a quote from the Bill Parcells. And he said, "If you were afraid of confrontation, you are not going to do very well."
Ain't that the truth? And, Jerry and Steven, they're getting it every day now because of their awful decisions or just not making any decisions at all. They're going to get confronted here a lot. We always try on under review, and maybe one day they'll listen. Thank y'all for tuning in this week. Pretty crazy couple of days in free agency, and I'm sure it'll just keep going with deals and everything. Next week, tune in for our March Madness episode. We'll be bringing our college basketball insider, Seth Goebel, back on from last year. And he'll tell you everything you need to know about this year's bracket, which will release on Sunday. So we're at that time of the year again. So tune in next week, and we will see you then for another episode of Under